So before we begin, just make it silent, your phone, so nobody will disturb us. Okay, so for the smoking time, I will definitely give you for smoking time. Okay, if you don't do, then still I will give you break time. So 15 minutes, 10 minutes break time, I will give you definitely. Okay, so let's begin. So let's break some ice. Hello, my name is Helpyy. No, my name is Ashwini. I'm not Helpyy, by the way. So let's share your name, your job or location. Have you ever done this training before?
Yes, Ayman.
Ayman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Location is Liverpool. I work in Usmania.
Usmania.
Yeah.
And you're working in Helpyy.
Yeah.
So AY, right?
Yeah.
If I'm
MAN.
MAN. Okay, so this is just for me to make sure that I will remember your name.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Ayman. So you have done this training many times because you are working as a man.
Yeah.
So that's great. So let me introduce myself. My name is Ashwini. This is me, but the old one. So I have done train the trainer courses, IADC, OSHA Academic, and Total Success. So I have also IPAF instructor courses I have also done. I am also certified from ECSI, Emergency Care Safety Institute, and I'm also American Red Cross instructor as well. So coming to my academic qualification, I have completed Bachelor of Commerce in Major Area of Accounts, and I have completed 2 years diploma in 2013 for health and safety, and diploma in teaching skills for educators. In 2017, I have completed. My experience is not that much, but still it's enough to compete. So, which is 8.10 year experience, and till now I have trained 19,995. So you will be added in 96 now. Okay, so I have different membership from different organizations. So some of them it's IPAF, ECSI, IADC, OSHA Academic, and American Red Cross. And some of them which I didn't mention, which is ILO, USQC, and some of them is National Safety Council. So let me go ahead. So we have training videos for you to understand easily. So we have a confined space training videos as per OSHA design, as per OSHA standard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will play those videos for you.
Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, requires employers to evaluate the workplace to determine if any spaces are permit-required confined spaces. This is essentially a two-step process. Step 1, identify all of your confined spaces, and Step 2, determine which of those confined spaces are permit-required, and conversely, which ones are not. The focus of this tutorial is on OSHA's definition of a confined space. Employers must evaluate all confined.
So as you know that there is confined space which permit required.
Yeah.
And as you know that there are confined space which permit, which don't need requirement for permit.
So
for example,
so there is some confined spaces, no need for work permits.
For example, now this area is closed, right?
Yeah.
So one man can enter and one man can exit, right?
Yeah.
So is this confined space?
This is a confined space.
This can be confined space, right?
Yeah.
So, but it has ventilation system. It has ventilation system. But if you can see the door itself, as per the standard of OSHA, which is 1910.146, that doesn't mean it is confined space as per the door design of door. Because, okay, you can enter one person can enter and one person can exit. But still you will be freely exit and freely entrance.
Yeah.
So if it's freely, then it is not confined space. Yeah, but still it is closed, structure is closed.
Yeah.
So like container is a confined space.
Yeah.
But if the container limitation of the exits and entrance is vast, it's little bit, you can say have 2 person can enter and 2 person can exit, then that is confined space. But as per the standard, it will not consider as a confined space then.
Not required work permit.
Not required per permit, even.
Spaces in the workplace, even if they do not have employees who will be entering those spaces. Also, the permit required confined space standard does not require documentation of this evaluation. However, it may be a good idea. So what is OSHA's definition of a confined space? The OSHA definition of a confined space can be found at 1910-146 paragraph B, definitions. There you will see that confined spaces are characterized by 3 criteria. It is important to note that all 3 criteria must be in place for a space to be considered a confined space. Also, keep in mind that whether or not a hazard is present inside the space is not relevant at this point. You are only trying to identify confined spaces. The first criteria listed in OSHA's definition of a confined space is the space is large enough and so configured that an employee can bodily enter and perform assigned work. The operative term is bodily enter. This means that the employee can fit entirely inside the space. If the space is not large enough for the employee to fit entirely inside, then the space does not meet the definition of a confined space. This standard is only intended to apply to spaces large enough and configured so the entire body of an employee can enter. This is clarified in the preamble to the final rule. The second criteria in OSHA's definition of a confined space is the space has limited or restricted means for entry or exit. Contrary to popular belief, this does not mean that the space has only one way in or out. It means the entrance ability to escape in an emergency would be hindered. Further explanation of this term is provided by OSHA in the preamble to the final rule. And in the OSHA Confined Space Advisor, they further explain that a space would have a limited means of entry or exit where the occupant must crawl, climb, twist, be constrained in a narrow opening, follow a lengthy path, or otherwise exert unusual effort to enter or leave, or where the entrance may become sealed or secured against opening from inside. Examples of a limited or restricted means of entry or exit could include portholes, where the entrant must squeeze through to enter or exit, hatches of a size or location that require the entrant to climb or squeeze through.
The one which came hatches.
Yes.
That one I have seen in training rooms.
In where?
In training rooms.
In training rooms.
Yeah. In the camps, in training room, you have a small
door?
Yeah, for basically that is used for emergency.
Yeah.
Because that sometimes that becomes locked.
Yeah.
So if it locked, so you can utilize that door, which is under the
it's in a corner.
Yes.
Manhole openings that the entrant must pass through to get into or out of the space, and entryways where the worker must climb a ladder to enter or exit the space. Spiral stairways, which are difficult to climb or descend. Steep stairways, such as ship's ladders and other non-standard stairways. Tight crawl spaces, such as beneath equipment, under floors, between walls, and above some ceilings. And enclosed spaces where the worker must travel a long distance to get to the means of exit. The question often arises as to whether or not OSHA considers a standard-sized doorway to be a limited or restricted means of entry or exit. In the preamble to the Permit Required Confined Space Standard, OSHA states that doorways and other portals through which a person can walk are not to be considered a limited means of entry or exit. However, a space containing such a door or portal may still be deemed a confined space if an entrance ability to escape in an emergency would be hindered.
Yep, this is the point now.
Yeah.
If you enter freely, okay, so there is no, you can say, restricted area, then that doesn't mean confined space as per the standard.
Yeah.
But if it's restricted area where you cannot walk freely by the door, then
one guy, two guys?
No, it's only one guy.
One guy.
Yeah, one guy. So if you can, if I will get this door, for example, you can walk freely, right?
Yeah.
And then you can enter also,
Yes.
easily. So that doesn't mean, as per the standard, as per their statement, that doesn't mean it's a confined space for that. But if it's a restricted area, then it means it's a confined space.
OSHA further clarifies their position in a later amendment published in the Federal Register, where they state that even if the door or portal of a space is of sufficient size, obstructions inside the space could make entry into or exit from the space difficult. The agency intended that spaces which otherwise meet the definition of a confined space and which have obstructed entry or exits, even though the portal is a standard-sized doorway, be classified as confined spaces.
So they said if it's a standard door, for example,
but you have obstructions inside,
yes,
so it could be
then that goes with confined space, because that is their statement will be matched.
Yeah.
The third and final criteria listed in OSHA's definition of a confined space is the space is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. For example, this particular utility vault has not been designed with any safeguards for entrance, so at a minimum, workers would have to utilize a portable blower, auxiliary lighting, and a portable gas detector before entering this space. On the other hand, this fully functioning submarine is designed for continuous employee occupancy, so it would not be considered a confined space.
Yes, because this is kind
so
of...
in review, here...
Kind of, what we call it, under the water always. So the people are working there, people are living there.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that it's confined space.
Is a recap of the three criteria listed in OSHA's definition of a confined space. Number one, the space is large enough and so configured that an employee can bodily enter and perform assigned work. And number two, the space has limited or restricted means for entry or exit. And number three, the space is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. As a reminder, all three criteria must be present for the space to be considered a confined space. We will now look at some examples of confined spaces. However, you must keep in mind that while these are confined spaces, they may not be permit-required confined spaces. That will be determined at a later time using additional criteria. Tanks of many configurations are considered confined spaces, as are most silos and similarly constructed storage bins. Air handler units and associated equipment are often constructed of a size and configuration that make them a confined space, as would be any ductwork large enough to be bodily entered. Many smokestacks are confined spaces, as would be many chimneys. And escalator pits of a size large enough for the employee to bodily enter would also be considered confined spaces. Some mixers, such as this mobile concrete mixing drum, are confined spaces, as are many types of boilers. Large furnaces and associated equipment often qualify as confined spaces, as do tanks affixed to trailers or to rail cars. And many trash compactors are configured to be confined spaces, as are some material balers. And as previously mentioned, many crawl spaces beneath floors and equipment, between walls, and above some ceilings are considered confined spaces as well. Most sanitary sewer systems are confined spaces, as are sewer lift stations and digesters. Some storm drains and culverts are confined spaces, as are many septic tanks, utility vaults, and pipelines of various sizes. One commonly overlooked type of confined space is dock levelers of the variety that have a front cover that lifts to where a worker could crawl inside. And as previously mentioned, some utility tunnels could be considered confined spaces, as would be some attic spaces and open-top pits. And many conveyor tunnels are confined spaces, as are some elevator pits. These are but a few examples of confined spaces that are present in some workplaces, and there are many that we have not identified in this short tutorial.
Elevator itself,
So you are encouraged to use
the skeletal elevator itself is confined space.
It's confined space area. But that required permit or not, that we have to see. Because those people who are working on the elevators, if there is a maintenance work, they have to work, right?
Yeah.
So they have to go maybe upstairs, or they have to go on the ropes. So they have to do maintenance. It could be chain or for cable maintenance, or inspection maybe. So then they have to go with the permit, or they don't have to go with the permit. That depends on the situation.
your knowledge of the OSHA definition of a confined space to identify all of the confined spaces present in your workplace, as this is the first step you will need to take so you can determine which are permit-required confined spaces, and conversely, which ones are not.
So basically, this topic is on behalf of 1910-146, which is standard for OSHA, and which Aramco actually follow, and they cannot deny that standard, because that standard is followed by all over the world. Okay, so let's go for the second topic.
Confined spaces, such as pits, manholes, and crawl spaces, are not designed for continuous occupancy and can be very difficult to exit in the event of an emergency. Construction workers often perform tasks in confined spaces and can face life-threatening hazards, including toxic substances, electrocutions, explosions, and asphyxiation. These hazards can largely be prevented if addressed prior to entering the space to perform work.
So this standard is also related to OSHA, which is National Safety Compliance, and HSE. So that basically they follow OSHA standards.
This program is designed to assist employers and employees in understanding the requirements for practices and procedures to protect employees engaged in construction activities at a work site with one or more confined spaces, and will cover the following: OSHA standards, general requirements, hazards of confined spaces, permit required confined spaces, training,
These are the topics.
duties of authorized entrance, duties of attendance, duties of entry supervisors, emergency rescue, personal protective equipment.
So this all will cover by this video.
If employees are engaged in both construction and general industry work, OSHA compliance for confined spaces will be met if they follow the requirements of the construction regulation 29 CFR 1926 subpart AA. In situations where the confined space in construction standard is applicable and another regulation which addresses a confined space hazard is also applicable, employers must comply with both.
So it's a general requirement.
OSHA defines a confined space as an area large enough and so configured that an employee can fully enter and perform assigned work, and has limited or restricted means for entry or exit, and is not designed for continuous employee occupancy. A confined space is not limited to small areas, such as manholes, crawl spaces, and ditches, but includes larger areas, such as tanks, vessels, and silos. Confined spaces require a permit if they have the potential for a serious safety or health hazard. A permit-required confined space, or permit space, is a confined space that may have a hazardous atmosphere, engulfment hazard, or other serious hazard, such as exposed wiring that can interfere with a worker's ability to leave the space without assistance. Only workers who have been assigned and trained to work in a permit space may do so. Before workers can enter a permit space, the employer has to write a permit that specifies what safety measures must be taken and who is allowed to enter the space. Before work begins at a work site, each employer must ensure a competent person identifies all confined spaces in which one or more of the employees it directs may work, and identifies each space that is a permit space through evaluation of the elements of that space, including necessary testing. If a workplace contains permit spaces, the employer who identifies or receives notice of a permit space must inform exposed employees by posting a danger sign or by any other equally effective means of the existence and location of and dangers posed by the permit space. A sign reading, "Danger, permit required, confined space, do not enter," would suffice. The employer must also inform its employees' authorized representatives and the controlling contractor of the existence and location of and dangers posed by each permit space. Employers who identify or receive notice of a permit space and do not authorize employees they direct to work in that space must take effective measures to prevent those employees from entering that permit space. If employees will enter a permit space, employers must have a written permit space program at the work site. The written program must be made available prior to and during entry operations for inspection by employees and their authorized representatives.
A written program is very important because if you don't document it, if you don't document anything, what you have inspected or what you have going for the work, so if you don't document it, then there will be no proof. I just remember one of my experience related to confined space. So I was working in a company. I don't want to mention the name actually. So what happened there? There was a supervisor over there. So he's basically he's a client. So the client basically, you know, the contractors, they always in the pressures. So what happened is that guy, he's one of good friend of the client. So he just stopped. It was 6 o'clock. I remember. It was 6 o'clock. Almost near to it's AM. No, in the evening, sorry. So it was in the evening, 6 o'clock. So almost near to shift close.
Yeah.
Okay. So the guy told the client told him that I have only few work to do. So can you just go and check in the tank?
Yeah.
So that was basically a chemical tank over there. So he said because he's a good friend of him, so he said it's okay, I will go and I will check there, no problem at all. So what happened, he went there without having documented permit, with only one call, he just went there And he said, okay, I will go and I will do it. Because he's a good friend. So, after, once he go there, within a few hours, he finishes work. But once he was coming back, because there was some problem with the car, with the guardrails. So once he was coming back, he just fell down. And once he fell down, he went inside. So now coming to the point, why PTW is important in confined space. Even we have a topic also, by the way. We will discuss more, but I just pause it so I can explain you here that why it is documented, why documentation is very important here. So what happened? He died. After 5 days, they discovered his body, and the body was almost melted. Almost melted. So they checked, the crew checked with their family, and their family always talk about that he's not here, he didn't came, from this day he didn't came. So they thought that something is wrong. So the supervisor, he's in the jail now, by the way. So still he's in the jail. So because of this supervisor, he's a client. So client means that need to do work, class. Right? People do like this. So what? Because he's a good friend. He's also a good friend. So he said, okay, I will handle myself and I will do it. No problem. Because the requirement from the client should be issue the permit. So what happened? He died. He lost his family. So now think about that. His family. Who will take care of his family now? Nobody can take care of his family. But his mistake was only what? He didn't issue the permit. Because now, coming to the point, permit. Because if you issue the permit, you need to issue before 1 week. Before the schedule of work, you need to issue before 1 week. So, this is a problem. And he needs urgent work over there. So, now, that is the most important thing, that documentation is very important. If you don't document, you don't have a proof. So, this guy lost his life. This guy is in jail. Why? How? Because investigator came and government agency also, they involved in that, and then they checked each and everything. Okay, and then finally the last call was attended by this guy. It was recorded, by the way. Because it was not recorded on his mobile, it was recorded on his mobile. Unfortunately. So that's why he is in jail. But the thing is, he lost his family lost him, and he is in jail. So it means both lost his family. Only because of the documentation. Only the reason is documentation. It will take how much time? Nothing. Could be, okay, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, okay, maybe half an hour. But half an hour can survive your life, you can survive. Half an hour can survive you, right? So this is the thing which they were saying, documenting is very important. If you don't document it, you don't know what will happen. Sure. And I was the guy over there who was supervising for safety. So I was unaware of this. By the next day, I got this information by the way. So I will play the video again. So let me play the video.
OSHA does allow for employers to use an alternative method for entering a permit space under very specific conditions. Consult OSHA's CFR 1926.1203E1 for more information. Before an employee enters a permit space, the internal atmosphere must be tested with an instrument that detects oxygen content,
You need to check with
flammable gases,
portable
and
monitor
vapors,
system.
and potential toxic
Sometimes
air
they check with the
contaminants.
layers. So yeah, just pause it here. Oh, just went out.
No.
So, what happened is they have a layers actually.
Yeah.
If you need to check some kind of a confined space area, then you need to check by the layers. So, layer means, for example, if you are checking from here, so the tube level will be 1, 2, 3. So, first will be oxygen level, okay, then there will be a flammable level, and then there will be a toxic level. So, without this, you cannot check this. You cannot check this.
You cannot
You cannot means you cannot go proceed more further.
Yeah. So
Okay, you have to go level 1, level 2, and level 3 in the confined space areas.
Okay. So first, before I come to make the work permit for the confined space or go to process entering the confined space, I have to check first the O2.
Once you are doing the permit, okay, you need to definitely, without inspection, you cannot issue the permit.
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
so that is a prior.
Sure. Yeah.
That
It should
prior
be
is
before the
yeah,
permit.
it's before. It's not after.
Yeah.
So once it's done, then you go for the permit. Yeah, this is clear. This is clear. This is clear.
Okay.
This is done. Monitoring system is portable device. Okay, we will provide you personal protective equipment. For example, breathing apparatus we will provide you. If the guy is doing welding or something like this, or maintenance, we will give you a ventilation system. Like
Yeah.
for example, like that.
Okay. So first, I have to check the O2, the oxygen.
Yeah, that oxygen level. Okay.
Oxygen level.
This is oxygen level.
Suppose this is a 10. Which level I have to check?
The upper level first of all.
Why only the upper level?
No, it will go. This is basically you can check all of them, but once you upper level, because toxic is heavier than air.
Yeah.
So air will always remain above.
Yeah.
Okay, the upper level. So the toxic level like H2S gas.
Okay.
H2S gas is heavier than
Yeah.
air, which is
Sure.
1.189. So it will always remain in down.
Okay. So I can check also the oxygen level at the down,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you will work at downside.
Definitely. My point is it's LER basically. Okay, which is low exposure limit. Okay, so you will check oxygen level with 1, 2, and 3. Okay, but the standard is what? The standard is basically this. This is given standard, which is oxygen, oxygen flammable, and then toxic. This is the standard. So you can check. You can go with this, by the way. This is the way they have to go.
Yeah. Okay. But for I'm thinking about the very big container, and I will
Okay.
go inside. So if I check the O2 or oxygen percent in the upper level, that means it's useless for me because I will work downside.
Definitely.
So maybe there is a restriction in oxygen
Definitely.
level downside.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Once you got toxic level, for example, now I'm coming to the point basically.
Yeah.
Once you got toxic level, you will know that there is no oxygen available.
So if I have toxic level,
For example, this is a tank. This is a tank here. Okay, for example, you have, I don't know this. So if you check, for example, this level,
yeah.
okay, so in this level, if you check, so you will find toxic, for example. For example, you will find H2S.
H2S, yeah.
Okay, so you find H2S. Definitely, if there is H2S gas, you will not find oxygen there.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So if you find carbon monoxide,
If I don't find H2S,
sorry,
if I don't find
then you will find oxygen there. Or if you find another gas, which is heavier than air,
yeah.
okay, so definitely then you will find not oxygen, you will find that in the monitor system, in the portable device. So
Yeah, I know. But if I find CO2 is heavier than
CO2 is basically lighter than air. So CO2, once if there will be CO2, then you will find here. Instead of oxygen, you will not find oxygen there. Then oxygen level will be here.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if there will be toxic, then could we have no oxygen? If there will be toxic gas available, because this is flammable.
Yeah. So it means that you have to find one type of gas, oxygen or toxic.
That depends on your portable device. In portable device, what you have is you have H2S, the monitor system I'm talking about. Okay, oxygen level, CO. CO is carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Okay, and there is LEN. So this is in your normal portable device.
Yeah.
Some of them they have CO2 as well,
Yeah.
and they have HEL as well, higher exposure limit.
Yeah.
So that depends on the what type of portable device you have for confined space. So if the normal, I'm talking about normal, if the normal is there, so if there is a ringing of alarm for H2S,
Yeah.
for example 10 ppm,
Yeah.
okay, so definitely you will not find oxygen,
Yeah.
right? If you, this is the
Not depend on the percent of H2S.
if it's 10 ppm, for example,
10 ppm is very low.
which activate the alarm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's low.
It's low, but which activate the alarm. For example, if you find H2S here, so your alarm will activate it, right?
Okay, but this 10 ppm, that means it's 10 ppm from oxygen inside.
Again, sorry.
10 ppm,
10
that
ppm.
means it's a percent from oxygen.
First person of oxygen. No, I didn't get you. Again, please.
If you have H2S percent,
Okay.
this is a percent of oxygen.
It's a person
Of oxygen.
of oxygen.
Yes. Because it's 10 ppm from the oxygen.
Okay.
You got my point?
I got you. Basically, what I will do, I will bring the monitor system to you. Not in this topic, we will do in PTW topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, once if there is H2S available, then oxygen level could be less.
Yeah.
You find
Once you have H2S, that means خلاص, you cannot enter without SDS.
yes, without permit,
Yeah.
without permit.
No, I cannot issue a permit because I can issue permit with breathing apparatus.
Yeah, no, you definitely the precautions will be.
Yeah.
After precautions, you will go with.
Yeah.
But without permit, you cannot enter.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there is sometimes we cannot eliminate the hazard, we cannot reduce the hazard. Okay, like for example, if we do, for example, here, if it's H2S available here, so we need to do ventilation system, right?
Yeah.
So if ventilation is two types of ventilation, one is exhale and one is extract. Extract is basically exhale. One is exhale, which take all the gases and it will exhale, but that will not work. That will not work. That is not allowed.
So if I have H2S,
For example, this they will take from ventilation system and then they will throw out to the environment. No, that is not allowed. So the one which is this, it will inhale from this environment and then it will exhale to the surface. So which will extract H2S gas.
again, which one is which one is acceptable?
Acceptable is this. This is a confined space area. So
This is the ventilation system.
So for example, this is, so now the air you will
Exhaust from here.
exhaust from the environment.
Yeah.
Yes. So and exhale to the confined space. So when if this H2S is there, so O2 will eliminate H2S gas.
Yeah. So that means you don't want to suck the H2S, you want to replace.
Yes, if you suck H2S and you exhale to the environment, that is not allowed actually, as per Aramco procedure as well.
Yeah, but it will be the same. If I replace, also I will put.
Yeah, you are right. It will be the same. The problem is what? The problem is they don't want to destroy the environment.
Yeah.
So that's why. I have one more, which it will be clear for you to understand that which one is the better one.
Yeah.
Okay, but we just skip that one. I don't know how it goes.
Yeah.
But okay, what I will do, I will play the other one. So then we can.
Yes. I need, you know,
The specific, no specific. No problem. So look at this. There is a guy. Look, this is the guy who is doing welding.
welding
Arc
inside.
welding, sorry.
He made welding inside confined space.
Yes. And maybe there was a gas release or something like that. So we will play again one more time. So he's welding over here, that guy. So as you can see. So look, this is the guy who's welding now.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a toxic level of the gas or maybe flammable. So, oops.
So he showed this before the LEA.
Definitely.
He didn't test the LEA.
Definitely, he need to test. Maybe they don't have, maybe lack of equipment, or maybe they have equipment or lack of training.
Yeah.
The reason is this: if the people, because look, these people are, to be honest with you, these people are very poor. Poor means they are not aware of anything. They just do work because my boss told me to do this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I know this work, but after that one, I don't know what is the hazard. Hazard is what? I don't know.
Yeah.
So those people are very poor about this. But we, as a boss, we know what is the hazard. We know if something goes wrong, what will happen.
Yeah.
But why we don't train them? You know, most of the companies. This is question I'm always raising to my students. Most of the company. They actually give training after the accident, not before the accident. Why? Can you tell me why?
This is a financial issue.
This is okay, financial issue, but this is
They want to save.
They want to save. If they want to save, then they have to give them training.
No, not save life, just to save money.
To save money, okay.
After retirement, so they have to.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, let me go to the next level. So what we have here, video describes some of health and safety hazards confined space in underground operations. Let's see. Something looks good. One of my favorite videos.
Accidents in confined spaces? Maybe if you work in a mine or something. But the work I do is pretty standard. If there were a problem, I'd be able to see it.
This video will explain this.
Well, you hear about pipes flooding and gases that'll knock you out, but extra safety precautions take time. Anyway, I've never seen anybody get hurt.
In his career, nobody gets hurt. In his career. That's it.
We're well trained, and I'm alert enough to recognize a problem if it develops.
I've worked in this industry for 20 years. None of my men have ever been seriously injured.
20 years and he never seen an accident, or he never seen his team got an accident. Find this guy.
These people obviously do their jobs well, but their response to the dangers of confined spaces ignores the reality of a potentially deadly hazard. Incidents of confined space injuries or fatalities are disturbingly similar, even though the jobs and job sites vary. June 1988. A member of a work crew investigating a gas leak is overcome 6 feet underground. His foreman attempts to pull him out and is overcome as well. A passerby calls for help, but before the men can be rescued, 3 firemen suffer from gas inhalation. The workers die of carbon monoxide poisoning shortly after arriving at the hospital. August 1988. A manhole worker collapses 19 feet underground when working in sewer.
Okay.
A co-worker tries to tie a rope around him and is overcome. A third worker is overcome attempting rescue.
Oh.
By the time the firemen pull the first worker from the hole, he is already dead. Exposure to hydrogen sulfide is suspected.
Every year in North America, hundreds of confined space accidents or fatalities occur in sewers, pipes, excavations, wet wells, and other confined spaces. The bottom line is workers have died in confined spaces, and death comes swiftly, silently, and often without the slightest warning. Why are these spaces so dangerous?
I've been investigating confined space accidents for over 10 years. These spaces are so dangerous because employers and workers don't always understand how they can become so dangerous. I mean, if you don't think they're dangerous, you're not going to take the proper precautions.
Confined spaces can come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but the hazards are all similar.
Normally, outside air contains about 21% oxygen and is necessary to sustain life.
So 21 is oxygen available. That's it.
21.
Yeah. So we
Some
go to
confined
the
spaces contain 21% oxygen, others do not.
some of
Oxygen
them
is
they
invisible and may
contain
be
and
used
some
up
of them
over
they
time in
don't.
confined spaces by things as simple as
It becomes
rust
19
or
now.
bacterial growth in slime. Other gases may enter the
18.
confined space and displace the oxygen. Operations such as cutting with oxyacetylene or heating will consume oxygen.
18.
If the oxygen in the confined space is reduced to 12 to 16%, workers will experience increased pulse and respiration, impaired judgment, and loss of coordination.
So now it is decreasing. It is decreasing.
The oxygen decreases.
Yeah.
If the oxygen level is at 6 to 10% or less when the workers
So
enter
now
the
maybe
confined
different
space,
gas.
they will experience nausea, vomiting, or loss
6
of consciousness followed by death.
So the minimum is 10%?
Minimum is basically
Oxygen
we go
deficiency is
with
particularly dangerous because it can cause drowsiness or euphoria.
as per human body, we inhale 16% inside in our body. Okay, so we require basically 4% for our body requirement.
Yeah.
As per oxygen. Okay, but some of body, like for example, people are so fat, more than 100 kg, more than 105 kg, then they require 5%. Have you seen someone in the elevator who's
Struggling to take risks.
he's having hard to take breath properly? Why? Because the lack of oxygen is there. So its requirement, we inhale 16 in our body, okay, which our body requirement is only 4%. 4% we kept in our body, and the rest of them we give to or we exhale to the environment.
Yeah. So 5% enough for us.
Yes, 5% is enough for us too. But it's still, we inhale 16%. We inhale 16%, which kept 4% in our body, and the rest of them, which goes with 12%.
So we should take 16%.
That depends on the body. That depends on the body. For example, if it's 21 in the environment, definitely out of 21 we will go for 16% we inhale. The rest of them see carbon dioxide, which goes with 0.045, 0.01 or 0.04% we take it. And which is nitrogen, depends on approx, because as per the standard now it's 73 to 78 approximately they have given. So could be 75, could be 76% we inhale. But that it's okay. That we inhale, that it's okay. But we require for our life, we require for our heart, we require oxygen level. Oxygen level is very important. So if we inhale 16%, we need to keep, as per our body requirement, is 4%. Once we kept 4%, have you seen somebody who got claps and somebody giving mouth to mouth?
Yeah.
So how he will give mouth?
Because he gave the oxygen.
Oxygen, but how?
Because he consumed 5% or 4%.
4% and rest 12%, his body requirement also
Yeah.
4%, right? So he gave 12%, he kept 4%, 8 will be exhaled.
Yeah.
Till now, until unless he wake up.
Yeah.
You got a point?
Yeah.
So that's how it actually goes. But 21% is available, then we inhale 16.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
If it's less,
no, I mean, you have to have 16.
you have to have 16. Yep.
16.
Almost.
Consume 16, you consume 5, and you
Yep.
exhaust.
Depends on 5 or 4,
Yeah,
that depends on the
4,
body,
5.
body physique. If it's 105 kilogram, then he goes with 5%. Clear for you?
Yeah, which prevents the worker from realizing the danger in time to escape.
We're on the scene of a tragic accident where just about an hour ago, 2 workers were found dead in this sewer. The deaths have been attributed to carbon monoxide poisoning, and officials have indicated that it's possible that the workers didn't follow standard gas testing procedures.
When we arrived at the scene, we found the 2.
So their point, now this is interesting here. So their point is basically once they arrived there, they found 2 guys is dead. So what they said is because they don't follow proper procedure. Procedure means documentation.
Yeah.
You remember that guy
Yeah.
who entered here? The reason is only this. It's a paper, it's a document. You need to complete. You remember, maybe you have seen many times the one which is in Abu Dhabi, the video for HSE.
Yeah.
So what was the reason? It's a permit. It's only document because in that video it says very clearly even that person has said very clearly that maybe that he was a supervisor. That what about permit? He said we will do it later on. Look, it's all if you see all the accidents or incidents, you will face only one thing, which is that.
Victims collapsed in the tunnel. My crew went in with full respiration gear, pulled the men out, and tried to resuscitate them, but it was just too late. When we checked for carbon monoxide, it was 4 times.
So they have carbon monoxide.
God only knows what it was when they went in there. No, I don't know why accidents like this happen, but I suspect that the workers just didn't follow proper testing procedures.
Testing procedures.
Carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide are 2 of the most deadly gases found in confined spaces.
Now, this
hydrogen sulfide and other toxic gases may enter the confined space from a variety of sources.
How it produces
source, rotting material, chemical leaks or spills, or as a byproduct of work processes.
Byproduct.
Carbon monoxide is odorless and colorless. It's produced from the incomplete burning of any carbon-containing material like gasoline, wood, natural gas, and propane, and can be lethal in doses of 1% or less. Hydrogen sulfide is invisible and has an odor like rotten eggs, but at higher concentrations, it may knock out your sense of smell. Death can result in seconds from hydrogen sulfide exposure. There are so many possible sources for toxic gases that it's impossible to predict the danger without testing.
Last year, my partner and I were repairing leaks on the air release valves in the sewer system. My partner was in the hole, pumping out water. I happened to look in and saw him slumped over.
So, you can say standby man?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Now, his mistake is standby man, he will go without SCBA, without the proper procedure.
Yeah.
Without the proper precautions. He just, this is the mistake which he
I
done.
remember going down the ladder.
If somebody fell down, you need to make sure that you will save yourself first and then you can save other people.
quickly those gases can hit you.
Tripod system is
Many
important.
gases can permeate confined spaces. Some, like methane, are extremely flammable. A single spark could ignite the air around you into an explosive fireball. There are other contaminants which can exist in confined spaces. They're sometimes the remaining byproduct of an old confined space operation, like welding or painting, or they may just seep into the space. But what they all have in common is that they can accumulate to dangerous levels in confined spaces.
What I hear from those workers lucky enough to survive is that wherever they were working, they were fine one minute and unconscious the next. The human body is like a sponge for gases. And it doesn't matter how big or strong you are. And in many accidents, when a passerby has the presence of mind to phone for help, it's usually too late. So planning on being rescued is obviously not the solution.
What can be done to prevent these accidents and injuries? Well, it's really quite simple. You develop a standard set of procedures which you follow, and you provide education and training for the workers. Here are the basic principles which you must follow before working in any confined space. The procedures for your particular workplace will be more detailed.
By the way, you can write these procedures.
Before entering any confined space, ensure that the surrounding area is free.
It will be, but this you can by yourself.
Test the atmosphere before you enter a confined space.
Everything will be there in the book.
Samples at various levels throughout the
It's up to you still. Yeah, now it
The first test to
comes.
conduct is for oxygen.
Oxygen level 1.
Oxygen deficiency can occur at any level.
So you can check any level of oxygen. And even flammable also.
Some gases, such as hydrogen sulfide, are heavier than air and could settle on the bottom of the confined space. Methane will displace oxygen.
So this is
It
flammable
an explosive
gases.
gas and is lighter than air.
Lighter than air, which is
Carbon monoxide has about the same weight as air, so it can be evenly distributed throughout the space. It's an asphyxiant, which prevents your body from
so
absorbing
carbon
oxygen,
monoxide is lighter
causing
than
you to
air,
suffocate.
or it is same as its air, so it will not be in the surface.
Ensure that the tests are taken by a trained worker, and the results are recorded in a logbook or on an entry permit. If gas levels are unsafe, you must first ventilate and then retest before entering.
Yep,
If the
this
gas
is one of the
levels are
most
within
important
limits,
point
you
which
must still
people do
ventilate the space
mistakes.
before entering.
Yep. Now this is the one.
Never use the ventilator like a vacuum.
Never
to draw
use.
air out of the confined space. It may draw in toxic gases from other parts of the space. The fan must blow fresh air into the space. Ventilation will provide a continuous supply of fresh air and prevent the buildup of contaminants. While workers are in the confined space, ensure that there is a worker on watch who can summon a rescue crew in case of emergency or is capable and equipped to conduct a rescue. Depending on the hazardous nature of the work or type of confined space, more sophisticated equipment and procedures may need to be used. For instance, workers may need to use a harness or lifeline attached to a tripod and wear a continuous gas monitor. There are even situations where a worker may have to wear a self-contained breathing apparatus. In summary, ensure the surrounding area is free of hazards. Test the atmosphere inside the confined space. Ventilate the confined space. And finally, ensure that a man watch has been initiated and emergency procedures have been established. Confined spaces can be found on many work sites, but their hazards may not be obvious. Preparation and testing are your only defenses against this potential killer. The danger is real, but by following established work procedures, most confined space tragedies can be prevented.